tweet from Caitlin Clark that has now racked up 8.6 million views. And here's what she had to say. She said, got fined $200 for this. Bench mob will be even more rowdy tomorrow. Let's go. And the bench is going crazy. This is the game that was at Gamebridge. And Caitlin Clark commented and she said the refs couldn't stop us. So she was fined $200 for this. And that is in response to an Instagram comment that she made on this photo of the Indiana Fever bench. So as you can see, this was from game 2 of the Fever versus Dream series, round 1 of the WNBA playoffs.
What if I told you Caitlin Clark just got fined $200, not for a foul, not for trash talk on the court, but for 4 words she posted online during the playoffs? For words. And here's the kicker. It wasn't even about an opponent. It was about the refs. Why would the WNBA choose to punish one of its biggest stars right in the middle of her team's best playoff run in years?
This blew up so much more than I thought it would. It has been no secret that players this entire season have been fined for their comments made against the referees. This is also something that happens across all sports. A couple of times, and I feel like that's what she was referring to, not to the fact that the refs couldn't stop them, meaning the refs were making bad calls in the game, but nonetheless, she was fined $200. This happens a lot in the NFL, in the NBA. How you can't blatantly come out and criticize the referees. Now, with this comment, it doesn't really seem like she was criticizing the referee. She just said refs couldn't stop us. And I feel like she was referring to the bench because they all were kind of like getting really hype and they ran on the floor.
Stick around, because this tiny fine opens the door to a much bigger scandal the league doesn't want to talk about. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video.
They are fined much more than $200. And I feel like for a lot of WNBA players, they don't really care what they have to say because the fines are so minimal. Just wanted to share that with you guys. There was a section of the internet, and it feels like a small section, but there was a section of the internet saying, oh my gosh, Caitlin is so entitled. And I guess that she also, when she went into practice, I guess the same day that she tweeted this, one of the reporters said that she walked into practice and she like yelled to the reporters like, hey reporters, go look at my Twitter, go look what I just posted. She thinks that she's better. She thinks that she can get away with anything, and people were making it a bigger deal than it needed to be. You're always going to have that section of fans, but a lot of people just thought that this was really funny.
How can just 4 words cost one of the league's biggest stars money and her reputation? That's the question everyone had when Caitlin Clark, sitting on the sidelines with an injury, fired off a quick post cheering on her teammates. She wasn't even on the floor, but somehow a 2-phrase message on her phone created more drama than the actual playoff game itself. She typed one phrase that made her look like the perfect supportive teammate, and another that made the league hit her with a fine.
And so I guess she thought it was very funny, and she wanted there to be some media attention around it. So that's that, you guys. It's very silly. It's kind of a non-story story, but nearly 10 million people were engaging with this one single tweet. So I felt like I needed to talk about it. We're saying it was so horrible of Shams. How could you spoil her moment? You haven't even tweeted about the WNBA all season, and then you decide at this moment to tweet about the WNBA. And speaking of another instance where people were overreacting on the internet, some WNBA fans were really mad at Shams. Now, if you're not familiar with Shams, he is an ESPN senior NBA insider. He is arguably the #1 insider.
Think about that. She couldn't play. She was in warm-ups clapping and yelling from the bench. Yet when Indiana shocked one of the favorites, the story ended up being about what she wrote online. The first part of that post was pure fun. Elite bench mob. That's the kind of thing players say all the time when their teammates step up. It's energizing, it's silly, and it's the sort of inside joke language that fans even love. Nobody had a problem with that. But the second half? That's where it got messy. Clark tacked on 4 words that apparently set off all the alarms in the league office. Refs couldn't stop us. That's it. Not cussing, not calling out a specific official, just firing a shot at the long history of questionable officiating that's been frustrating players for years. If you know the history, you understand why the WNBA reacted so quickly. The league has fined players before for going after refs. even when those comments were tame. Aisha Wilson once hinted that officials were deciding games more than players did. Warning: Diana Taurasi got tagged years ago for lashing out after a loss. Straight fine. It's a pattern. Over and over, players have either been warned or forced to pay up if they hint at officiating being part of the result. That's why others whisper about it after games, but almost never say it on camera. Everyone knows the punishment is coming if you say too much. Now, here's where the money side makes everything stranger. Clark's WNBA rookie salary sits around $76,000. That fine, $200. For her, it's like someone charging you a fee for posting on Instagram. She's landing brand deals with Nike, Gatorade, State Farm, you name it. Her outside endorsements are reportedly worth millions already. So, obviously, the numbers don't matter. She didn't lose money in this. She lost the ability to speak freely without being slapped down by the league. That's why fans were so fired up. Everyone understood the fine wasn't about punishing her wallet. It was about saying, "Don't test us." And the irony made it even louder. On the same night Clark was sidelined, Kelsey Mitchell went off for 34 points, and the Fever took down one of the top seeds. That should have been the headline. Indiana keeping their playoff dreams alive against the odds. Instead, most people were reading about Clark getting fined a couple $100. Think about how outrageous that is. The actual win gets overshadowed by what's basically pocket change, but the symbolism behind it made it way bigger than the score. Fans immediately connected the dots. If Clark can't post a half-joking jab after her team wins without catching heat, what chance does a veteran have to speak about a blown call in crunch time? Online, people weren't laughing at the fine. They were questioning the priorities. Why does the league care more about 4 typed words than the actual quality of the games? Why is the league so quick to silence any mention of officiating instead of addressing how uneven it feels? That's where the so-called punishment flipped into a scandal. It wasn't about stopping Clark specifically. It was about protecting a system from scrutiny during the most important stretch of the season. When you step back, it's clear the fine was never about the money. It was about sending a message, loud and clear, not to touch the subject of officiating. Clark poked the bear, even if only slightly, and the league responded faster than it usually does for much bigger controversies. That speed alone showed their priorities. It made players whisper more quietly, it made fans angrier, and it made everyone wonder, if this was just one playful post, how bad would the consequences be if a player spoke the truth in front of cameras after a tough loss? Caitlin Clark didn't really expose herself here. What she exposed is the league's soft spot. Officiating that players clearly don't trust but aren't allowed to call out. That's the real story behind the fine. It's not about $200, it's about shutting down that conversation before it grows louder. Fans are the ones who can keep the conversation alive. Push for change, don't accept silence, and back the players who risk speaking up. Because if the WNBA actually wants to keep growing, fixing the way games are called will have more impact than any fine ever will.